What the chips make the world turn around? Let me ask you a question, and I want you to really think about it for a second. What's the one company that touched almost every single device you use today? Your phone this morning, your laptop right now, the car that got you to work, the server that powered your video call. There is one manufacturer quietly working behind all of them. One company that made the chips that made those products possible. That company is TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, and most people have never heard of it. Today, we're going to change that. Welcome to Introcorp by S, a series about the companies that shape the world, told through data, told with clarity, and told in a way that actually makes sense. I'm Stacy, and this is our very first episode. We're starting here with TSMC because if you want to understand the semiconductor industry, or honestly, the global tech economy, this is the only place to begin.
Before we get into the company itself, let me take 30 seconds to tell you what this series is. Introcorp by S is a recurring series where I walk through individual companies and give you a grounded, data-backed introduction to what they do, how they make money, and why they matter. No hype, no service level overview, just the company clearly explained. Every episode is built from primary sources, annual reports, filings, official disclosures, and every episode is designed so that even if you know nothing about the company going in, you walk away with a real working understanding. That's the promise of this series. So why TSMC first? Because TSMC is, in my view, the single best entry point into the entire semiconductor world. Once you understand TSMC, every other company in this space starts to make sense. It's the foundation, and foundations are always the right place to start. But this channel is more than one industry for upcoming. Alright, let's paint the portrait. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, was founded in 1987 in Hsinchu, Taiwan, by Morris Chang, a Texas Instruments veteran who had a genuinely radical idea at the time. We'll get to that idea in just a moment. Today, TSMC is listed on two exchanges. On the Taiwan Stock Exchange, it trades under ticker 2330. On the New York Stock Exchange, it trades as an American Depositary Receipt, an ADR, under the ticker TSM. So whether you're an investor in Taipei or an investor in New York, you can hold a piece of this company. The business model is what the industry calls a pure play dedicated foundry. That phrase might sound technical, but it's actually one of the clearest and most elegant business models you ever see. TSMC does one thing and one thing only. It manufactures semiconductor chips on behalf of other companies. It doesn't design chips. It doesn't sell chips to consumers. It manufactures. That's it. Pure play, dedicated, foundry. And that singular focus? It turns out is the entire secret to the company's success. Let me show you exactly why.
Think about how a chip gets made. It starts with a design. A company, let's say Apple or NVIDIA or Qualcomm, has an idea for a chip. Their engineers spend months, sometimes years, designing that chip on software. Every circuit, every transistor, every pathway, all designed in the abstract on computers. These companies are called fabless companies because they have no fabrication facilities of their own. They have brilliant chip designers, but they have no factory. That's where TSMC comes in. Step 1, the fabless customer designs the chip. Step 2, they hand that design to TSMC. TSMC takes that design and manufactures it at massive, extraordinary scale, using billions of dollars worth of equipment in facilities that cover the size of city blocks, with processes so precise they operate at the scale of individual atoms. Step 3. The finished chips go to the customer, who puts them into the products you and I actually buy. The phones, the laptops, the servers, the cars. Now here's the part that makes the whole thing work. TSMC has one rule, one absolute ironclad principle that has never wavered since the company was founded. TSMC never competes with its own customers. Never. Not in design, not in products, not in markets. It manufactures for everyone and competes with no one. Think of it like a contract bakery. Imagine a bakery so skilled, so perfectly equipped, that every major restaurant in the city comes to them to bake their signature bread. The restaurants bring their own recipes. The bakery bakes the bread. And the bakery never opens its own restaurant. That's the deal. That's the trust. Because the moment that bakery opens its own restaurant, every single chef pulls their recipe and never comes back. TSMC understands this completely. The purity of the model is its greatest business asset, and it is the reason that Apple and NVIDIA and AMD can all share the same manufacturer without ever looking over their shoulder. Now let's talk about the numbers, and I mean the actual numbers. From TSMC's 2025 annual report, their Form 20F filed with the SEC. These are not estimates. These are not analyst projections. This is what the company itself reported. In 2025, TSMC served 534 customers, 534 distinct companies, all bringing their designs to TSMC to be manufactured. It manufactured 12,682 different products, nearly 13,000 distinct products. Different chips, different specifications, different purposes, all rolling off TSMC's production lines. And to do all of that, it deployed 305 different process technologies, 305 ways of making chips, from the most cutting-edge sub-3 nanometer nodes all the way through specialty processes for sensors, automotive chips, and radio frequency applications. What does that actually mean? It means TSMC is not just one company. It's the backbone of the entire global electronics supply chain. When the world's best chip designers finish a design, there is one place, more than any other, where that design becomes real. This is it. And the revenue reflects that. Consolidated net revenue reached 3.81 trillion new Taiwan dollars in 2025, up 31.6% over the prior year. The four markets driving that growth, high-performance computing, which is AI, data centers, and servers, contributed 58% of revenue alone. Smartphones contributed 29%, and then Internet of Things and automotive applications round out the picture. These four markets are where the world is going, and TSMC is the manufacturer in all of them. Here's what separates TSMC from everyone else. Technology leadership. And this is not a marketing phrase. It is a verifiable, documented, multi-decade engineering achievement. Let's start with the most important number in semiconductors right now, the process node. When we talk about nanometers in chips, 3 nanometers, 2 nanometers, and so on, we're talking about the scale at which transistors are etched onto silicon. The smaller the number, the smaller the transistors. And smaller transistors mean you can fit more of them on a chip, which means more computing power, faster speed, and dramatically better energy efficiency. TSMC's 3 nanometer technology, which it calls N3, represented 24% of total wafer revenue in 2025. That's a mature, high-volume technology producing real chips at scale for the world's most demanding customers. And then, in the fourth quarter of 2025, TSMC crossed a major threshold. Its 2 nanometer technology, N2, entered high-volume manufacturing. The company reported good yield at 2 nanometers and expects a fast ramp through 2026. 2 nanometers. For context, a strand of human DNA is roughly 2.5 nanometers wide. These chips are operating at a scale that is almost impossibly small. But TSMC doesn't stop at 2 nanometers. The roadmap is already published. Next comes A16. That's 1.6 nanometers, targeted for 2026. And after that, A14, 1.4 nanometers in 2028. Each generation brings new engineering innovations. TSMC's A16 platform, for instance, features something called Super Power Rail Architecture, which routes power delivery underneath the chip rather than on top, freeing up valuable surface area for computing logic. And it's not just about advanced logic. TSMC also leads in what it calls specialty technologies, mature nodes optimized for specific applications. RF chips for wireless communications, power management chips for electric vehicles, MEMS sensors, image sensors. These aren't the headline-grabbing 2-nanometer nodes, but they represent enormous markets, and TSMC competes in all of them. The technology edge is not an accident. It is the product of decades of focused investment, disciplined engineering culture, and, crucially, the scale to fund it. TSMC planned capital expenditure of 52 to 56 billion US dollars for 2026 alone. That number, by itself, is larger than the entire annual revenue of most semiconductor companies. This is how you stay ahead. Technology leadership alone isn't enough. What makes TSMC truly indispensable is what it's built around, the technology, an ecosystem called the Open Innovation Platform, or OIP. And this is what turns TSMC from a manufacturer into something much more powerful. Here's the idea. When a chip designer sits down to design a chip for TSMC's 2-nanometer process, they're not starting from scratch in a vacuum. TSMC has built out 4 pillars of support around every process node. First, there's the process itself, the manufacturing technology, documented and made accessible to design teams. Second, there's IP, reusable silicon building blocks, pre-designed circuit components that designers can license and integrate into their chip, rather than building every function from zero. Third, there are certified tools, design software and verification flows that are tested and proven to work with TSMC's specific manufacturing process. And fourth, there's a broad network of partners, companies, institutions, and collaborators that extend the ecosystem even further. Think of it like an app store, but for chip design infrastructure. When you build an iPhone app, Apple doesn't make you invent the camera API from scratch. It gives you frameworks, tools, libraries, developer support. TSMC does the same thing for chip designers. The Open Innovation Platform is why a design team anywhere in the world can build on TSMC's process with confidence, because the tools, the IP, and the support structure are all there waiting for them. So let's pull it all together and talk about what actually makes TSMC a strong business. Because this is a company, not just a technology showcase. And the business case is as compelling as the engineering. Pillar 1, specialized. TSMC is a pure play foundry. That means it has never been distracted by consumer products, by its own chip designs, or by any other business line. Every dollar of investment, every engineer, every square foot of clean room, it all goes toward one mission: manufacturing chips for others better than anyone else in the world. That kind of focus, sustained over nearly 4 decades, creates a depth of expertise that is essentially impossible to replicate quickly. Pillar 2, deep capability. TSMC's process know-how is not something you can buy off a shelf or catch up to in a few years. It's the product of billions of hours of engineering iteration accumulated at extraordinary scale. The company shipped 15 million 12-inch equivalent wafers in 2025. That's not a stat, that's a moat. The sheer volume of production experience embedded in TSMC's manufacturing processes represents a competitive advantage that compounds with every passing year. Pillar 3, trust. This might be the most underappreciated pillar of all, and in some ways, it's the most valuable. Because TSMC never competes with its customers, the company has earned something rare and precious in a competitive industry: genuine trust. Apple trusts TSMC with its most sensitive chip designs years before a product ships. NVIDIA trusts TSMC with the architectures that power its AI accelerators. AMD, Qualcomm, MediaTek, they all share the same manufacturer, and none of them have to worry about TSMC using their designs against them. That structural trust is not just a nice to have, it's the entire reason the business model works. Why start here? Why TSMC first? So let's come back to the opening question. Why TSMC? Why does this series start here, with this company? Because TSMC is the clearest window into the entire global semiconductor supply chain. When TSMC announces a new process node, chip designers around the world reroute their roadmaps. When TSMC has a production delay, product launches shift. When TSMC builds a new fab in a new country, governments take notice, and entire economic strategies are reconsidered. One company and its decisions ripple everywhere. The semiconductor industry is often described as complex, and it is, but a lot of that complexity resolves itself when you start in the right place. TSMC is the hub. Everything else, the fabless designers, the equipment makers, the IP companies, the chip packaging firms, they all orbit around the foundry at the center. Understand the hub, and the spokes start to make sense. One company, virtually every advanced device, 534 customers, 12,682 products, a technology roadmap extending to 1.4 nanometers, and a business model built entirely on trust. That is TSMC. And now you know it. That is TSMC, and that is the first episode of Introcorp by S. Thank you so much for being here for the very beginning of this series. It genuinely means a lot. If you found this useful, if this gave you a clearer picture of a company you'd heard of but never fully understood, then this series is working exactly the way it's supposed to. Subscribe, follow along, and share it with anyone who you think would appreciate a no-nonsense, data-grounded take on the companies that shape the world. TSMC connects to almost every company in the semiconductor space. The equipment makers, the chip designers, the EDA software firms, the packaging companies. Next episode is MediaTek. The dots are going to connect. I'm Stacy. This is Introcorp by S. I'll see you in the next one.